Thank you. Well, yes, so my name's Adam and I work at Duncan Jordanstone, and one of the projects I work on is called Rewind, which is to do with the history of video art, and we are preserving and re-exhibiting work. So I'm going to go right back to the 1920s when John Logie Baird was first doing his experiments with television. Now this thing here, it's not a self-portrait. This thing here is Stookie Bill. This was the thing he used to do his experiments on, and the reason he used this is because the lights were too hot for people to stand in front of. So this is kind of like the first television personality. Now when he was doing his experiments, TV was all live at the time. You couldn't record it. So he was doing these experiments to try and record it, and he managed to record something onto vinyl records. So very cool at the time. And it was called Phonovision. But the problem was he didn't have much success in being able to play them back again. So there's the records there, and that's the sort of image you get back. The first person to actually get something back off them was in the 90s, and it was a guy called Donald Maclean. So video wasn't really, you couldn't really practically play it back or record it until the 1950s, when these gentlemen who will appear on the next slide, who look like something out of Mad Men, came up with this thing here, a very portable, obviously, machine, which this is what was used until the 1970s on TV for video. Second guy on the left there is called Ray Dolby, who you might recognise for Dolby Industries. And obviously when video artists want to get involved in new technology all the time, so this is a piece by Andy Warhol. He was one of the first people to use video, and the thing he sort of discovered was you could play it back right away, whereas film at that time you had to send it off to a lab to get processed. I mean, this is just something normal now, but this was like revolutionary. Now this is the first sort of practical thing that was used, must-have fashion accessory for young ladies in 1968. This was picked up by artists pretty quick because it was kind of cheap. It wasn't very good quality, but you could play it back right away. And one of the first people to use it was a guy called Nam June Paik, who was an artist in the started off messing about with TVs, putting magnets on them and building robots out of TVs and all sorts of things. So he was one of the first people to use it, and he managed to record something and play it back the same night, which doesn't sound that exciting, but it was at the time. Believe you me, it was at the time. So quite a lot of the stuff that I've been working on is rescuing all this kind of stuff. So this is one of the decks. And quite a lot of the tapes have to be heat treated beforehand as well, because they've become degraded. And then we can play them back on these decks if you can find any that work, and they're very rare. One of the pieces that we recently restored, well, it's a piece called Monitor by an artist called Stephen Partridge. Now this piece here was made in the 70s, and it uses the idea of kind of video feedback and images going on to infinity. And we also managed to, as well as the piece itself, managed to find an original monitor to play it back on. And this is it here in Tate Britain. It was actually just bought by Tate Britain recently, and it's on just now for another few months if you happen to be there. And another artist we worked with was called David Hall, and he did a thing on Scottish TV, one of the first artists' video to be on TV, and it was in 1971. It was called TV Interruptions, and there were 7 of these, and this randomly came on between programmes on STV in 1971. So it was things like taps filling up TVs and TVs going on fire and all sorts of things. So he wanted to turn this into an installation, so that's what we did. So we worked with them, and the first time this piece was shown was in the VRC at DCA in 2006. So it was all on 7 different monitors, and it's been shown quite extensively worldwide now, and this is in the Tate just at the earlier this year, but unfortunately David died this year and didn't happen to get to see it, so there's a little memorial there from that you can see. Another couple of artists was worked with is these 2 guys called the Doobie Brothers. They worked with Zig Zig Sputnik, if anyone remembers them, on their live sort of shows, and also they worked with Arcane and did the video for Mars Pump Up the Volume, if anyone knows that. So they did these live sort of shows in the 80s, and we wanted to try and recreate them as a simulation on a single screen. So we did that with them, and that's what you can see here. But we wanted to go a bit further, so we worked with them to recreate one of their live performances that they did in the 80s. So we did it in the VRC at DCA. We got all these CRT monitors and put them on a scaffolding, and then they VJ'd with them using VHS decks. We had to make sure that they used the original equipment, otherwise it wouldn't have been authentic, you know. So we did that, and then it turned into an installation for the rest of the time. Also, on the same sort of themes, video walls, back to David Hall. He worked with an artist called Tony Sinden and did these pieces called 101 TV sets and 60 TV sets in the 70s. And the idea was that he would just put a whole load of TVs into a gallery and put them on, and they'd all be on different channels and half-tuned and all sorts of things. So there's like great cacophony of noise and sort of visual kind of like barrage of stuff coming at you. It was completely mad. So we wanted to do an updated version with them. So we worked with the University of Westminster and their massive gallery space in Baker Street. And we did a piece called 1001 TV Sets. So you can imagine what that was like. Well, there you go. This was in 2012. So it was all these TVs all over the floor, pulsating, bursting out, and some went on fire, and some were tuned and half-tuned, and it was just a completely amazing experience. But at the end of the show, all the TV, the analog signal at the Crystal Palace was the last one to get switched off in London. So all the TVs just suddenly went to white noise and just white, except a few which David had put in with Stooky Bill, heralding the death of analog, but bringing forth the future of digital. Thank you.